You did everything right. You worked hard. You stayed consistent. You made more money than you ever thought you would. And now, you're in your 40s. But no one ever warned you that this is the decade where everything quietly locks in. Not your 20s, not your 30s, your 40s. Because this is where people either build a future they can actually live in, or they accidentally trap themselves in a life they can never afford to leave. And the worst part? Most people don't even realize which one they chose till it's too late. Welcome to the financial maze. And by the end of this video, you're going to see exactly where your life is heading. You're in your 40s, and for the first time in your life, things feel under control. You're not struggling like before. You're not guessing anymore. You know how money works, at least enough to survive. Your income is higher. Your routine is predictable. Your life looks stable. And that feeling? It's addictive. Because after years of chaos, uncertainty, and pressure, stability feels like winning, like you finally made it out, like you're ahead. But this is exactly where most people stop questioning everything, because nothing feels broken. Nothing feels urgent. Nothing is forcing you to change. And that's the trap. Because in finance, the most dangerous moment in your life is not when you're struggling. It's when you feel comfortable and don't realize you've stopped paying attention. You're still in your 40s, but now something subtle starts to shift. Not in your income, in your behavior. Because this is the decade where your lifestyle quietly reaches its peak. Not overnight, not with one big decision, but through dozens of small ones that all feel justified. You upgrade your home, not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you tell yourself, I've worked for this. You upgrade your car, not because you need it, but because now it feels reasonable, safer, more comfortable, more aligned with who you've become. You spend more on convenience, on experiences, on things that save time, because time now feels more valuable than money. And none of this feels wrong. That's what makes it dangerous. Because every decision makes sense, in isolation. Every upgrade feels earned. Every expense feels justified. But what you don't see is that your entire financial structure is being rewritten in the background. Your cost of living rises, but your awareness doesn't. Your lifestyle expands, but your flexibility disappears. And slowly, without a single dramatic moment, your life becomes more expensive to maintain than it is to change. Think about that. It becomes easier to keep going than to stop. And that's where the trap tightens, because now your income isn't just supporting your life, it's defending it. Every dollar you earn is already assigned. Mortgage, car, insurance, subscriptions, expectations, a version of life you've built that now expects to be maintained. And here's where it gets even more subtle. You're not chasing status anymore. You're protecting normal. This isn't about looking rich. This is about not falling behind, not stepping backwards, not losing what you've already built. And that pressure, it doesn't show up in your bank account. It shows up in your decisions. You hesitate before taking risks. You avoid change. You stay where things feel safe. Because your lifestyle has quietly become something you can't afford to disrupt. And that's when it happens. The moment where success stops being freedom and starts becoming responsibility. Heavy, constant, non-negotiable. And the worst part? From the outside, everything still looks perfect. Good income, nice house, solid life. But inside the system, you've already crossed a line where upgrading your life means locking yourself deeper into it. At this point, your life looks complete. From the outside, everything checks out. Stable income, solid career, a home that fits your stage of life, a car that reflects your progress, bills that are normal, nothing extreme, nothing irresponsible, just adult life. And that's exactly why you don't question it. Because everything you're doing looks like what everyone else is doing. And when something feels normal, it stops feeling dangerous. But here's what quietly changed. Your expenses are no longer flexible. They're fixed. And fixed expenses change the rules of your life completely. Because now, your survival has a price tag. Every single month. No matter what happens. Mortgage, car payments, insurance, school, utilities, subscriptions you don't even think about anymore. All stacked together, forming a number that must be paid. Not optional, not adjustable, non-negotiable. And here's the part most people miss. You didn't increase your lifestyle. You increased your commitments. And commitments behave differently than choices. You can choose not to spend, but you can't choose not to owe. Let that sink in. Because this is the moment where your income changes roles. It stops being a tool for growth and becomes a system of maintenance. You're no longer building something. You're sustaining something. And sustaining requires consistency. No breaks, no interruptions, no mistakes. Because if your income slows down, everything starts collapsing. And that pressure, it doesn't show up as panic. Not yet. It shows up as quiet dependency. You can't afford to stop working. You can't afford to take a step back. You can't afford to experiment. Because too many things depend on your income continuing exactly as it is. Month after month. Year after year. And here's where the trap becomes invisible. From the outside, you look successful. From the inside, you've lost flexibility. You've lost optionality. You've lost margin. And margin is everything. Because without margin, there is no room to recover. No room to breathe. No room to adapt. You're operating at full capacity, all the time. And when life inevitably throws something unexpected, there's no space to absorb it. So you compensate. You push harder. You work more. You stay locked in. Because now, your life is not something you control. It's something you must maintain. And this is where most people get stuck for decades. Not because they're bad with money, but because they built a life. That requires them to keep running. And never stop. Up until now. You could still tell yourself a comfortable story. I'll fix it later. I'll invest more next year. I just need a little more time. And for most of your life, that was true. Because time was always on your side. In your 20s, mistakes were cheap. In your 30s, they were manageable. You had room to recover, room to learn, room to restart. But in your 40s, something changes. Not dramatically, not loudly, quietly, permanently. Time stops being your ally and starts becoming your constraint. You don't feel it in a single moment. You feel it in realization. When you start doing the math. When you realize how many years are actually left. When someday quietly turns into soon. And soon starts feeling uncomfortably close. Because here's the truth. No one explains clearly. Compounding doesn't forgive delay. It rewards time and punishes hesitation. And by your 40s, you've already used up the most powerful years you had. The early years. The invisible. Advantage. The decade where small actions could have created massive outcomes. And now, you're no longer building with time. You're racing against it. Every decision matters more. Every mistake costs more. Every delay compounds in the wrong direction. And this is where most people panic. But silently. Because externally, nothing looks wrong. You're still earning, still functioning, still moving forward. But internally, you start to feel pressure you can't explain. A quiet urgency. A sense that something should already be in place, but isn't. And that feeling doesn't come from fear. It comes from awareness. Because deep down, you start realizing something uncomfortable. You don't need more income. You need more time. And that's the one thing you can't buy back. Not with a raise, not with a bonus, not with another promotion. Time doesn't respond to effort. It only responds to when you started. And for most people watching this, that realization hits late. Too late to casually fix things. Too late to rely on eventually. Now, every move has to be intentional, precise, calculated. Because the margin for error is gone. And this is the moment where your future starts to compress, where your options begin to narrow, where your decisions stop being about growth and start being about damage control. And once that shift happens, it's very hard to reverse. Nothing changed. Your income is still there. Your job is still there. Your life still looks the same. From the outside, everything is fine, but inside, something is different. You start thinking in ways you never did before. Not out loud, not in conversations, just quietly, at random moments, driving alone, lying in bed, looking at your bank app for a second too long, and the thought shows up. Not clearly, not fully formed, but enough to unsettle you. Am I actually going to be okay? You don't answer it. You avoid it. You distract yourself because the question itself feels dangerous. And this is where the panic begins. Not loud, not dramatic, silent, because nothing is collapsing. Yet. That's what makes it worse. Because now you're not reacting to a problem. You're sensing one. And sensing creates tension. A constant background noise. Subtle, but persistent. You start noticing things differently. How much you actually spend. How dependent your life is on your income. How little room you have if something goes wrong. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's the shift. Where awareness replaces comfort. And comfort never fully comes back. You begin to run small scenarios in your head. What if I lose this job? What if something happens? What if I need to stop, even for a while? And every time you follow those thoughts, they lead to the same place. Constraint, pressure, no margin. And that's when it hits you. Not as fear, as clarity. You're not as secure as you thought. You're stable, but fragile, functional, but dependent. And that realization changes how you move. You become more cautious, less willing to take risks, less open to change. Because now, you're not optimizing your life anymore. You're protecting it. Protecting your income. Protecting your structure. Protecting the system you've built. Even if that system is quietly trapping you. And here's the most dangerous part. This panic doesn't push you to act. It pushes you to freeze, to stay where you are, to keep everything exactly the same. Because change now feels riskier than staying stuck. And that's how people spend the next 10, 15, 20 years. Not because they want to, but because they don't feel like they can afford not to. And all of it started here, with a question they didn't want to answer. At this stage, You're making more money than you ever have. On paper, you've won. Your income is strong. Your position is respected. Your life looks impressive. If someone looked at you from the outside, they'd assume you figured it out, that you're ahead, that you're secure. But here's what they don't see. You can't slow down. Not even a little. You can't take a break. You can't step back. You can't afford to reduce your pace. Because everything in your life now depends on your income continuing exactly as it is, and that's when it hits you. This isn't freedom. This is dependency. High-income dependency. The most dangerous kind. Because it hides behind success. You don't feel poor. You feel obligated. Obligated to keep producing, to keep earning, to keep sustaining a system that cannot pause. Because if your income drops, even slightly, everything starts tightening. Not collapsing immediately, but tightening. Less margin, less breathing room, more pressure. And pressure changes behavior. You start saying yes to things you would have questioned before. You tolerate situations you don't like. You delay decisions that could improve your life. Because now, stability feels more important than progress. And here's the shift most people never notice. You stopped working to build a life and started working to maintain one. That's a completely different game. Because building creates options. Maintaining removes them. And the longer you stay in maintenance mode, the harder it becomes to break out. Because your identity is now tied to your income. Your lifestyle depends on it. Your responsibilities depend on it. Your sense of control depends on it. And without realizing it, you've created a version of success that you can't step away from. Not without consequences. Not without discomfort. Not without risk. And risk is exactly what you've been trained to avoid. So you stay. You keep going. You keep performing. Even if something inside you knows, this isn't what freedom was supposed to feel like. Because real freedom is not about how much you earn. It's about how much control you have. And right now, your income looks strong, but your control is weak. And that imbalance only gets worse over time. Most people think their future is something they'll decide later. That one day, they'll sit down, make a plan, adjust things, and everything will work out. But that's not how it works. Your future isn't decided in one moment. It's decided quietly, across thousands of small decisions you barely notice. And by your 40s, those decisions have already started stacking. Not visibly, but structurally. Because at this stage, you're no longer shaping your life. You're reinforcing it. Every payment you maintain, every expense you accept, every decision you delay, locks something in place. And the more things get locked in, the fewer options you have left. That's the part no one explains. Retirement is not a moment. It's a direction. And by your 40s, you're already moving in one, whether you see it or not. You're either building flexibility or eliminating it. There is no neutral, no pause, no, I'll figure it out later. Because later is just the result of now. And this is where people cross the point of no return. Not because it's impossible to change, but because change becomes too expensive, too disruptive, too uncomfortable. Financially, emotionally, structurally. Your life has weight now, responsibilities, expectations, commitments that depend on you continuing exactly as you are. So even if you realize something needs to change, you hesitate, because pulling one piece might destabilize everything. And that's when people accept it. Not consciously, but gradually. They stop trying to redesign their future and start adapting to it, lowering expectations, adjusting timelines, accepting limitations, not because they want to, but because it feels safer than disruption. And this is where the final illusion breaks. You thought your income would define your future. It doesn't. Your structure does, because income can fluctuate, but structure locks you in. And once your structure is fixed, your future becomes predictable, not based on what you hope, but based on what you've already built. And most people don't realize what they've built till they try to escape it, and can't. Let's look at the numbers. Not the ones people post online. The real ones. If you reach your 40s without building serious assets, you're no longer playing the same game. Because now, you're competing against time you can't recover. Let's break it down. In your 20s, money had decades to grow. In your 30s, it still had momentum. But in your 40s, every dollar you invest has less time to compound, which means one thing. You need more capital, more consistency, and less room for error. And most people? They don't adjust. They keep living like time is still on their side, spending like, delaying like before, assuming they can fix things later. But there is no later anymore. Now every delay is amplified. Every bad decision compounds faster. And here's where the system quietly benefits, because a person who needs their paycheck is predictable. They won't take risks. They won't challenge the system. They won't step out. They'll keep working, keep paying, keep maintaining. Welcome to the loop. So, what separates the people who escape from the ones who stay here forever? It's not intelligence, it's not luck, and it's definitely not income. It's awareness, followed by action. Because once you see the system, you have two choices: ignore it, or restructure your life around it. And this is where everything flips. Your 40s are not about upgrading your life anymore. They're about protecting your future. That means thinking differently. Not, what can I afford? But, what is this costing me long term? Not, does this fit my life? But, does this trap me inside it? Because at this stage, every decision either buys you freedom or locks you deeper. There is no neutral move. So here's what actually changes everything. Not theory, not motivation. Real decisions. You stop upgrading your lifestyle automatically. No more, I make more, I spend more. That pattern is over. You redirect your income into assets. Not things, not status, not temporary comfort. Assets. Things that reduce your future dependency. You aggressively reduce fixed expenses. Because fixed expenses are anchors, and the heavier they are, the less you can move. You buy flexibility instead of status. You choose options over appearance, because flexibility is what gives you control. And control is what most people realize they never had. Every dollar now has one job: buy back your future. Most people think their future will somehow work out. It won't. It will be the exact result of what you tolerate today. Your 40s are not just another decade. They are the moment your life locks in, where your habits become structure, where your structure becomes destiny, and where your options either expand or disappear. So the real question isn't how much you make. It's this: are you building a future you can actually live in, or one you'll be forced to survive? Because one day, you're going to look at your life and realize it didn't happen to you. You built it. Welcome to the financial maze.